Hello, my name is Amy. I'm a volunteer with the League of Women Voters. This is the Video Voters Guide, and we're here to interview Secretary of State candidate Val Hoyle. We're going to ask her a few questions, and you as a voter can become more informed. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So our first question is to get some more information about you as a person. Tell us about your background and what led you to run for this office.
So I grew up in a political family. My father was a union president of the firefighters, very active, and he was a pro-life Democrat. My mother was a pro-choice Republican and worked with National Organization of Women and other groups to make abortion legal and birth control available before Roe versus Wade. So I grew up in a family from where, in a very young age, I knew that my voice mattered in the political process. I worked on my first campaign in 1974 when I was 9 years old. So it never occurred to me that my voice wouldn't matter. And when we moved to Oregon in 1999, based on the reputation of the school district, and I found out about Measure 5 and I found out our schools needed help, I got active and I got to work on bond measures and raising money for schools and then getting people elected. Then I became chair of the Democratic Party of Lane County and eventually ran to become state representative, all because I know that being the first person in my family to graduate from college, that education means opportunity. And so I was an education advocate, and I decided to run for Secretary of State because I want every child in Oregon, every person in Oregon to feel like their voice matters in the same way that I knew when I grew up in my home, that again was a politically aware home. If people vote and they have a voice, they feel like their voice matters, then we have a much better process. I feel the more people are engaged, the better the process is, and there is no better place to affect that kind of change, have that impact, than in the Secretary of State's office.
Great, thank you. So an area of intense interest with the Secretary of State position is campaign contribution transparency.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where do you see that going, and what could you do to bring it to the public?
I think that the most important thing we can do is have sunlight and transparency in our campaign finance system. So we do have Orstar, which is a place you can go to find out where contributions are, who gets contributions from where, but it isn't an intuitive system. So I think we should make that more accessible so that ordinary people can search that database more easily. I also think that independent expenditures and people that do pass-through money, so one political action committee gives money to another political action committee to another one, we need to make sure that that's transparent and we're connecting those dots. I also believe that if people have large contributions, they should, like they have a law in California where you list your largest contributions, who are your largest contributors, so that people understand who they're voting for and who you're supported by. I think finally, one of the most important things we can do is have publicly financed elections, because if we have publicly financed elections, then that really can mitigate the impact of big money in politics. I mean, we don't have campaign finance limits. I would like to see us enact some sort of campaign finance limit that would require a change to our Constitution. But until that happens, publicly financed elections, greater transparency, and one of the first things that I would do as Secretary of State is ensure that the Orstar system is easier to search.
Okay, great, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about difficult decisions that this office may have to make. You know, what are some areas that you may have to handle with controversial decisions?
So there are quite a few. You're in charge of elections. We are the only state in the union where the Secretary of State oversees the audit division, where you're auditing state dollars. In elections, you have to rule in a way that is fair and not in the way that maybe your friends would like. As the auditor-in-chief, you're effectively the ethical compass of our government. It means highlighting things that maybe aren't working right, that could save lives. I mean, it's not just, we have financial audits, performance audits, and IT audits. And sometimes that means highlighting things that people in your own party are doing that need to be brought to light so that we can fix it. I mean, as the Secretary of State, you're overseeing two of the most important areas in our state government. One is the elections process. And you have to rule on that in a way that is fair, that is impartial, and that is not partisan. I am a Democrat, and I am a proud Democrat, have been my whole life. But my reputation in the building, both as a majority leader and as a state representative, is someone who is fair, someone who's transparent, and again, those decisions, when you make a decision based on the facts, it's kind of like being a referee on a sports team. You make the decision with the best decision based on the knowledge that you have. And there will be a lot of political pressures. I think the other one that's most obvious is redistricting. The person that's elected Secretary of State will be an incumbent in 2020, will likely be handling redistricting. And if you do that job well and you do that job fairly, if the redistricting comes to the Secretary of State's office, inherent in the job is that you're not going to make friends, because you have to make the decision based on communities of interest and not on political benefit. So I think I've shown throughout my career, 25 years in the private sector in international business, as a caucus leader who not only passed very progressive legislation, but maintained relationships with people across the political spectrum, that I would be willing to make hard decisions and be transparent about it.
Okay, thank you. So we have about a minute remaining.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other comments that you'd like to mention as a candidate?
I think, first of all, thank you, and thanks to the League of Women Voters. It's an organization that my mother was involved in, I've got involved in, and I really appreciate what you do, again, to highlight issues in a way that's political but not partisan. I think that I don't come from the Portland metro area, so there's a number of the voters that don't know me, but I am very excited to have the possibility of serving this great state. I've served the state as a state representative, as the majority leader of the House, and I would love to serve this state as your next Secretary of State.
Well, great, thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you for watching. Again, this is the Video Voters Guide. My name is Amy. I'm a volunteer with the League of Women Voters, and we were just speaking with candidate Val Hoyle, who is a candidate for the Secretary of State office. Be sure to register to vote by April 26th for the Oregon primary on May 17th.